overpowered. I had a speech worked out. I may well, in fact, refer to it sometime in the next hour or so. But coming in here, I have a huge flashback. Let me tell you what it was. The first ever Discworld event that was held in Britain included a masquerade. We had 5 people turn up as Rincewind. So what happened, I decided that I would go, this was held out in the open, big tents and stuff like this. I went to the other side of the field and I held up a £10 note. All the Rincewinds had to line up and someone fired a pistol and I said I'd give the note to the first Rincewind because the faster you are, the more like Rincewind you must be. And they were all very fast. And sometimes in my nightmares, I can remember it now, the enormous sandals and all coming directly at me and nobody was slowing down. I like events like this, but you need more kind of masquerade stuff, like competitions for the palest goth, you know? Or most tightly corseted goth. I'll help, Judge. I mean, there's already quite a lot of Gandalfs here, I've noticed, you know, so I'd like to see them fight it out. And I'm glad to see there's a few trolls with us today. I've always been on the side of the trolls. Never been quite so in favour of the elves. The thing is, I could play a troll without makeup. Anyhow, why am I here? Actually, that is an extremely good question. I like coming to this place. This is my 3rd time, but I'm probably here because I am the author of the Discworld books. So those people who were expecting a literary discussion had better leave right now. Although the strange thing is that since I was here, I now have 4 honorary doctorates in literature. So I am, in fact, Terry Pratchett, delete, 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 delete. In fact, I'm actually now Terry Pratchett, OBE, delete, 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 delete. The OBE is Order of the British Empire. Now, there is a kind of problem. As Prince Charles gave it to me, he was very gracious about it. I put him at his ease. You know, I said, hello, how long have you been Prince of Wales then? Wow, that long? Well, amazing. The kind of minor problem is that once I started checking out, we don't actually have an empire as such. Except if you go out into the Atlantic and you go past Ireland, there's this rock called Rockall, because it's all rock, obviously. And I think that is still part of the empire, because there's only puffins and penguins live on it, and they haven't agitated for independence and self-government. So as far as I can work out, if I can go to Rockall, those penguins have bloody well got to do what I tell them. And that's the kind of weird stuff that happens. I never expected any of this when I started. I did not expect to make any kind of money out of writing. Jessica, very nice artwork. Thank you. I certainly didn't expect to make a living I really didn't expect to make an extremely good living. And I absolutely didn't expect to become a millionaire. And I really, really never thought at all that I'd become a millionaire again. But so it's happened. For those of you that don't keep count, I think it's now 33 Discworld books. I'm a bit nervous because 2 weeks ago I pressed the button to send the next Discworld book off to my publishers. In the old days, you know, you could spend a whole day printing out on a daisy wheel typewriter. Yeah. The sad part is that I'm 6,000 words into the next book by now, which is the next one about the We Free Men. I quite like, I'm not actually contracted to turn it in till almost a year ahead, but well, let me share something with you. I had a heart operation last year. In fact, I had a terrible time. Well, you can't tell it from reading Going Postal, but it was written by a man who was kind of out of his head because he was on beta blockers, or was it not beta blockers? Anyway, I think they were beta blockers. They turn your brain to cheese. Because I had high blood pressure, and they didn't do anything with my blood pressure. And then the doctors tested me, and they weighed my wallet, and they said, your wallet is far too heavy for a man of your age. So they put me on a slab, and they put 2 stents in my heart because there was something getting blocked. And apparently now I'm fitting well, but slightly less rich than I was before. What was particularly memorable about that, because you know that did turn things around for me. When I woke up afterwards, the doctor came to see me, and he said, we had a bit of fun and games on the operating table. And I said, is this medical speak for you nearly died? And he said, oh yes. But it was a heart operation, so basically you nearly die in any case. And I said, well, it was really cool because I was laying there on the slab, and you can stay awake for the operation. They operate on your heart via your groin. Now, I tried to explain to them, you know, groin, heart. There's got to be a simpler way, but these doctors, they would just not listen. It's all done remotely, and you can watch it on television. They give you a little thing to knock you out slightly, and you lie there going, and this is the best bit. This is the best bit. They were playing a Jim Steinman compilation because they like to listen to music while they cut. And I asked, had they got some Jim Steinman? They said, well, yes, patients don't normally ask for that. And I remember lying there, this is cool. I'm on the operating table, and the last thing I see is my heart still beating. Darkness, wake up. And so the doctor said, have you noticed you've got bruises on your arms? And I said, yeah, I was a bit puzzled. He said, do sandwiches mean anything to you? And I said, yes, I remember. It was dark, but then I looked up, and there was a man in the operating theatre selling sandwiches. And you sat up on the operating table, and please call it the operating table, we don't like you calling it the slab, and shouted, there's a man with sandwiches! And we tried to push you back, and we said, there are no sandwiches. Who's got sandwiches? There are no sandwiches. I said, well, he was definitely there. He was kind of skulking around so you wouldn't see him, but I could see him all right. So that was my near sandwich experience. So the advice I'm given is that should it happen to you, do not go towards the sandwiches. It looks very attractive, but do not. But it's nice to think, isn't it, that no matter what happens, when you do pass away, wherever you head, wherever you're going to go, they're going to give you something to eat on the way. And maybe what you get to eat indicates where you're going to go. So if it's kind of really nice cheese and Branston pickle, you're going to go to heaven. But if you get the cucumber sandwiches with the crusts cut off, I should run away if I was him. Okay, what can I tell you? Subsequent to that, you know, it was, I said, I'll slow down, except that there is one big problem about slowing down. I can't. So we did Science of Discworld 3, and I finished 3rd, and now I'm on to Wintersmith, which is the next book with Tiffany Akin, and I've got plans for 2 more Discworld books, actually 2.5 more Discworld books after that. So I'm going to use the kind of no brakes version of slowing down, which really means you just keep going until you hit some kind of wall. But actually, I think I'm okay because the surgeon's son is a Discworld fan, so there's kind of the unspoken thing here, keep him alive, so you can get something to give the kid on his birthday and at Christmas time. Or at least keep enough of him alive on one hand to sign the book. I gather that most of you will be here because you've read at least some of the Discworld books. It probably is by now the longest series written by one guy within the fantasy and SF genres. I can't think of anything else. There have been lots of Tarzan, lots of Conan, but not, I think, all by the same guy. Anyway, I'm not seeking any kind of award for that. I think we're coming to a problem time as far as Discworld is concerned. There's a limit to how many books you can keep in print. As it is, if you go into a bookshop, there's probably about, if you're lucky, half the series there, which kind of weakens the sales of a series, I think. But I intend to keep going. Because it's so much fun. I wish I could tell you how much fun I had writing Thud. I actually get such a kick out of this, and the best bit is they then come up and give me a load of money afterwards. There doesn't actually appear to be any kind of downside, although someone did ask me the other day, what's the weirdest thing you've ever signed? That's not the kind of question to ask a fantasy author. Side blade, done that. Sun Spark workstation dragged into the shop, done that. Palm Pilots, oh, done those. Body, oh, any amount of them. Always outside the bikini line. And the weirdest one was the guy who asked me to sign on his wrist. That's fine. And then he was back at the end of the queue, having gone to the tattoo parlour and had my signature tattooed. Now, tattoos are great, but not immediately after they've been done. They look like a bit of a disaster. What do you think of this then? Oh, this is very nice. Just think he might die and they'll think he's me. Then, in order to prevent Discworld getting tired, at least tired from my point of view, a couple of years ago I started doing the allegedly children's Discworld books. Which was kind of a very good idea, because at some point in a series people feel inclined to franchise things. Well, I franchised Discworld to myself. I gave myself a kind of license to do different things with it. And then blow me down if I didn't win the Carnegie Medal for The Amazing Morris and His Educated Rodents, which is, I think, the highest award a children's book can get. But I don't think I'll get it again because I ate the medal. Seriously. What happens is, you see, they give you the medal on a day with, with all the press there to take pictures. And it's lovely, and it's like this, quite round, and it's all got, it's kind of gold effect. And then they invite you to an official big dinner for librarians where they officially give it to you. You're allowed to take it away, but you must bring it back. Now, I won't even ask if there's any librarians in this audience. Librarians do like chocolate. So, in the intervening month, I got my PA to look around until he found some chocolate money. Do you have the stuff here in Holland? Chocolate money that was exactly the same size as the medal. When I was officially, when I had to give the lady the box so she could give it back to me, I opened it up, said, I love this medal, this is a great medal, I really, really like this medal. You know the best thing about this medal? You can eat it! And I broke it in two and stuck it in, spat out the gold and stuck it in my mouth. The 2.5 seconds before anybody reacted at all were the longest in my life. Because you could hear, what's that? It could have been chocolate. We've known. Shut up, no, here's the real one. And then they all decided they better laugh. And the next one, as many of you will know, was The We Three Men, which I know has now been published here, which was a bit of a breakthrough for me because I just sat there thinking that fairies turn up in literature all the time, but they always are English fairies. And I thought Scottish fairies would be fun, especially if they were a cross between Billy Connolly, Rab C. Nesbitt, and you just do not have Rab C. Nesbitt. Oh, you know about Rab C. Nesbitt, yeah. Rab C. Nesbitt is not a work of fiction, he's a documentary about Glaswegian life. In other words, they're kind of Smurfs that have seen Braveheart far too often. And suddenly they just erupted in my imagination. But sometimes weird things happen. How do I write? I make it up as I go along. Every author does, but most of them won't tell you it's like this. But the whole part of the making up happens really before I start the official book. I plunge in, I got some ideas at the back of my mind, some characters, a few thoughts, so I write them down to see how they're going to go. I did that for The We Three Men. I thought, fine, I now know how this book goes, and I started the book. And there were certain things in it that were important. I gave Tiffany the name Tiffany because, no offence to any Tiffany's present, but words have baggage. And the baggage attached to the name Tiffany, I'm afraid, is a little bit pole dancer, if you know what I mean. Just a slight shade of hairdresser, which is very strange because actually the word comes from epiphany, which means personal experience of a god, so which is not what you'd expect in the average pole dancing establishment. I want to explain, as an aside, that one of the sub-stories in Thud is Nobby's romance with Tawny, who is a pole dancer, but she's very posh. She has her own pole, and Tawny is the most beautiful woman anyone has ever seen, and she was Miss May in Girls, Giggles and Garters. In fact, she was Miss May and 2 weeks in June. She was that good. And no one can quite understand how this romance is going, you know? Especially since she's so much taller and just, rather. She probably can't see Nobby Nobbs when he's standing in front of her, which may explain the whole thing. But there are a lot of Thud is a highly textured book, so there's lots of that kind of stuff in it. Anyway, continuing. It was clear to me as the book developed that Tiffany had a real relationship with the landscape on which she lived, the chalk. You guys just don't have any of this. I think the French had some. But most of southern England is chalk landscape, and as far as England is concerned, it's the centre of the mythology. That's where you find Stonehenge and Avebury and burial mounds and all kinds of stuff. It's where effectively kind of English civilization began. And the chalk she lives on means a great deal to her. She kind of identifies with it, and she's kind of freaked out by the fact that it was created underwater millions of years ago by tiny deaths of tiny billions and billions of little creatures. And the book was going very well, and at one point, because Nat MacFeagle used a kind of slurred Gaelic sometimes, I thought, just out of interest, what would the sound of the word Tiffany mean in Gaelic? My agent knows Gaelic, and I phoned him up and said, what would Tiffany sound like? And he said, well, I'll speak to some experts. He came back the following day and said, it could have two meanings depending on where it's said. Tifane, which would mean something like away with the fairies, you know, a little bit gone in the head. And I thought, hey, that's good. He said, but Tifane would mean land under waves. I said, yes, it's it, it's exactly it. How come I knew that? She has this kind of mystical relationship with a land created underwater. And I thought, isn't it nice when God reaches down and pats you on the head? Obviously he's done it to me fairly often, I was so pleased, and that really sort of helped me write the book. And something quite similar happened with a Hat Full of Sky. So I'm quite attached to Tiffany, and I'm growing her up by about 15 months between books to give her a different outlook on the world. Thud has been a lot of fun. I mentioned Nobby's romance, but I can tell you right now, the watch gets its first vampire. And just as there were problems with a werewolf, you know, think of all the problems vampires have. I mean, a werewolf, Angela the werewolf, can carry spare clothing or a little bag on her collar when she's a wolf. When you can turn into 155 bats, it's hard to remember which one is carrying your pants. Which means if you're a woman and a female vampire, it means wherever you can actually come back into being a vampire, you're going to be naked. On the other hand, you can punch someone's heart right out through the back of their body, so maybe that isn't going to be a major problem. And there's a scene I really enjoyed where Angela the werewolf and Salacia the vampire are doing the kind of "you think you've got it bad" thing. I just won't tell you about the cocktail bar and the girls going out for a hen night. It just is kind of, you know. But in the end, it ends up with the building catching fire. What I'm going to do is, because we're going to have much more fun doing it like this, I'm going to take some questions from you guys. There's no good in me telling you about this, or you all know about it anyway. So it's much more fun if I tell you the things that you really want to know. So let's have the normal I'm going to say the normal 5 seconds of humiliated and embarrassed silence, and you just come and spoil it, madam. So I can go, yeah.
You've written Art of Discord, Science of Discord, and I'm really waiting for Sex of Discord.
Never been very good at sex.
You can hire some help.
Oh, I think help would rapidly become available. I think the kind of funny thing is, I was going to say sex and comedy don't go together, but they do if I'm involved. No, I have to tell you, I was at a party in London, and there's a very funny Australian kind of chick lit writer called Kathy Leth, and she's quite outrageous. And she marched up to me and said, "Can you make a woman laugh in bed?" I said, "Regrettably, yes." Laughing's okay, but you shouldn't point. I don't know. Sex is so basically funny anyway. I don't know what I could actually do to give it, if you like, added value. What we are actually thinking about right now, and I've been doing some work on for years and years, is the folklore of Discord, because I've borrowed so much stuff. Some of it you guys don't know about. You think I'd actually make it up. And some kind of indications to help you along and say, I mean, it was quite shocking recently to get a letter from someone who said they were a witch. Said, well, what was really cool was your idea of 3 witches. You know, one that's very young, you know, one that's middle-aged, and one that's old. So, yeah. What kind of coven do you come from then? The really stupid coven. So there will be more spin-off like that. I'll give it some. I'll give it some thought. So many goths here, aren't there?